Hello, budding hackers. Welcome to the wireless network post-attack configuration part of the course. So, in this part of the course, we'll be discussing what to do when you have hacked into a Wi-Fi network, how to perform information gathering, how to perform reconnaissance, and how to gather the information of the devices on the local network. So, as we learned before, local networks on a LAN cable and Wi-Fi networks on a Wi-Fi card are intentionally the same, only the physical medium by which the data is carried through changes. In Wi-Fi, we use by radio waves, and in physical means, we use LAN cables to carry out the data. So, what can we do when you have gained access to a Wi-Fi network? Well, the first thing I told you was to open the router settings. So, what you can do is, if you have hacked into a Wi-Fi network, you can obviously visit those Wi-Fi network router pages, that is 192.168.0.1 or 192.168.1.1 or something else, and see if you can get into the admin panel and change. If you can get into the admin panel by logging in with the default username password, which is admin or something along the lines of those, well, you can obviously change the Wi-Fi password and you can see all the devices connected to it and perform all kinds of administrator operations. Basically, the Wi-Fi network is in your control then. It's basically like controlling the router, as we learned in the previous course, the routers that carry the traffic from one device to another. It's basically controlling the router so that you can control the flow of the traffic. You can change the password if you want, etc., etc., etc. So, what if you can't access that Wi-Fi routers page? What if you go into it and type admin and it does not log in, or admin password does not log in? So what do? Well, the first thing that we get into a network and do is we perform some reconnaissance and we check for the devices that are running on the network. So basically, what we'll do is we'll ping all the IPs in the network. How do we know what all the IPs are? Well, let's just get into it. So if we open our terminal first, and I'll zoom in for you guys. Let's first type ifconfig to check our IP. So I'll type ifconfig. And as you can see, I'm on the WLAN 0 Wi-Fi network, and this is my internal IP. So this is the IP that was provided to me by the router. And if you remember correctly, let me just split this terminal vertically and let's resize it a bit so it's clear for all you all. So I'll just resize it and I'll run the command again and I'll zoom in for the output. So as you can see, we had the output here, and the IP of our device, the one we're using right now, is 192.168.0.25. And if you remember correctly, when we wanted to visit the Wi-Fi routers page, we had the IP of 192.168.0.1. So as you can see, this is the IP of the Wi-Fi router and this is the IP of the device. If you see the similarity, well, you can see, well, most of them, if we talk about it. So let's open a text editor here. I'll type gedit. Gedit is, it's mousepad. I'm sorry in Kali. I'm used to just typing that. So yeah, let's open mousepad. So we have a mousepad window open here. So let's talk about it. I'll just resize it a bit. So, and I'll increase the font so that it's visible. So yeah, let's talk about it. So we know the router at the address of 192.168.0.1 or 192.168.1.1. In this course, since mine has 0.1, I'll be assuming that. So let's remove that from now, but you can always remember. So the router has the IP address of 192.168.0.1. It is also known as the gateway address because it serves as the gateway for all the devices on the network. So it is also called as the gateway address. So we have the router's address or the gateway address or the AP address. The AP, let me show you. The AP stands for access point. And what do I mean by access point? Well, I just mean the Wi-Fi router basically. So when someone is talking about a AP, they are talking about a Wi-Fi router. So now you know APs or gateway addresses or Wi-Fi router addresses all are the same, which is router address. So we know the router has the IP address of 192.168.0.1 or 192.168.1.1 as we discussed before. It could be something else also, but we are not sure. So in case we need to find that, we can look into it later steps in the course. So yeah, let's assume it was this, and mostly it will be this. The next thing you know is that your IP address is 192. So or let's type Kali. So the Kali address that we have is 192.168.0.205, as you can see. It says 192.168.0.205, and if we get, let's close this one. So let's collapse it and let's zoom in again and let me resize it. So yeah, we have the IP address of our machine, which is 192.168.0.25. So now, if you may see, there are some similarities. The IP address starts from the same digits, that is 192.168.0, and then we have some digits here, which can be anything. It could be 1, it could be 2, or it could be 205. So as you can see, the starting addresses are same. So we can assume that the other devices on the Wi-Fi network would have addresses of something like 192.168.0.2, 192.168.0.5. Let me type that again. Yeah, 0z, wait, I messed that up. 0.5. So as you can see, we can have so many combinations. Like we can go from 1 to 205 and check all the IP addresses. So one way to check would be to open a terminal, and let's assume that the router was on 192.168.0.1. So the next device would be 192.168.0.2. So what we can do is I can just type ping. So I'll type ping and I'll press space and I'll press enter. And as you can see, I'm pinging, but no data is coming back. So maybe, as you can see, the destination host is unreachable. So this device does not exist. So next I can do is I can type 0.3 and I can perform that attack again. And as you can see, this is how we could, this is one way to do it, but obviously this is not the proper way to do it because it can take you so long to do this. And we all are lazy. And since we're hackers, we should know how to automate things. Well, for our case, we don't need to really automate it because we have a very powerful tool at our hands, which comes pre-default in Kali. So let me show you. It's called Nmap, as we discovered before. So if we open up the manual of Nmap, as you can see, it's the network exploration tool, security, and port scanner. So basically what it does, it scans on the devices on the network. As you can see, there is a description given about it and whatnot. You can read if you want to. It does a lot of things. Nmap is a very powerful tool, and one hacker should always know how to use Nmap. In fact, Nmap is one of those tools that if you're good at, you can do pretty much anything. Nmap is a tool as old as time and is still used today. It's very solid, it's robust, it does everything that you need it to be. It might be a little slow sometimes, but still, it is the industry standard for scanning networks and performing reconnaissance attacks. Even if you become an ethical hacker and get into your career, you'll always be using Nmap. And if you're not using Nmap, some tool that is scanning will be using Nmap behind the, GUI interface, basically, behind the, works. So yeah, let's learn something about Nmap. So we have Nmap and we can give it the IP like 192.168, etc., etc., etc. But since that can get a little cumbersome, we also have a GUI application. So remember we talked about terminal applications and GUI. Well, in most cases, you should learn how to use Nmap with the GUI, and moving forward in the course, we'll be using Nmap with GUI with the terminal. But for this section of the course, since everyone is new and you need to get your hands basics ready, you need to get your hands warm with Nmap. We'll be using a GUI tool which is called Zenmap. So probably Zenmap may not be installed by default on your Kali system because it's depreciated as of now, but it should work for our case. So what you can do is you can always type sudo apt install Zenmap and press enter, and it will ask for your password, which was Kali, so you can press enter. And as you can see, it shows Zenmap is already installed, but you can obviously install it by this simple basic command. It's pretty easy. So yeah, once we have Zenmap installed, what we'll do is we'll minimize the terminal here. We'll open our start menu and we will type Zenmap. And as you can see, I have Zenmap here. So Zenmap is basically the GUI version of Nmap. It will give us a root warning. So the next time what we can do is we can open a terminal and we can type in the terminal, we can type, since it needs root privileges, I can type sudo Zenmap. Zenmap and press enter, and it would ask for a password and I will give it the password, and now Zenmap is open with root privileges. So as you can see, a program will open. So it's basically the GUI version of Nmap. So basically we can provide it the IPs to scan in different types of scans. So it may seem a lot of options, but let's just go with the defaults first. So remember, we know that the router is here and the device that we're using is here, and all the IP addresses can be consisting of this format. All right. So what we'll do is we'll give our target a subnet address. So what do I mean by a subnet address? Well, 192.168.0, that is, and this is the subnet. So all the IPs assigned will be under this subnet. And a way to tell a scanner to tell all the devices on the subnet is to type, we'll go to the target tab and we'll type 192.168.0.1/24. So what do I mean by this is, whenever I type 24, it's going to scan all the devices that are present on this network. Don't worry about the 205 and why I'm writing 24 here. When I type /24, it means scan all the devices possible on this local network or on this Wi-Fi network. So once you have provided that, you can provide the type of profile that you need to scan. First of all, let's do a ping scan and see if every device is up. So by this way, we can check what kind of devices are on the network. So let's just go with the ping scan and we can press scan. And as you can see, it shows starting Nmap, and now we'll look at the Nmap output. So as you can see, it shows us 256 IP addresses scanned in 2.10 seconds. So it's quite fast. And as you can see, the device is here. So the MAC address for the router is given here. As we discussed before, this is this. And then we have a Xiaomi communications so that we can make sure that this is some Xiaomi device on my Wi-Fi network. So I'm doing this for the tutorial. So as you can see, so for the 192.168.0, we have the MAC address of the router as we discussed before. So 192.168.0, that is for TP link. That is the router that we had. And then we have the other IP, which is 0.146. And as you can see, the host is up and its MAC address, and it identifies it as a Xiaomi communication device. So probably a Xiaomi device, maybe a phone, maybe Android phone. Well, you can always, go up from here. Now, on the other device that we have, that is 0.180, and it shows a Wistron new web. So it's probably the hardware inside. You can always Google and see what is Wistron new web, or maybe Google the MAC address and identify what kind of device is it. Then we have the other IP, which is 188, and it shows Amazon Technologies. So probably it's an Amazon device. So as you can see, we had 5 devices on the network, and we scanned through all of them. As you can see, it shows 256 IP addresses. So we scanned through all the 256 IP addresses, and we came up with this result. So now you can see how powerful you are. Now, once you're in the network, you can always see what kind of devices are on the network and what their brand is. But this does not stop here. In fact, this begins here. So now once you're in the network and you have scanned all the devices, ZenMap will populate a host list for you on the left. So as you can see, it shows 146 one way. And you can always, check on them and what is happening, but we don't have any services running for them. So what can we do next? Well, after you have done a ping scan, you can switch to a quick scan plus. So also the command that Nmap uses, so basically you can do this command, you can copy it and go to the terminal, paste the same command, and it would give the same output. But ZenMap has a good thing about it, that it gives us all the versions, all the, direct commands that it uses, so that we can put it into a terminal and use the same commands again. So let's start with the quick scan plus. Now, warning, this could take time on your local network, and it is illegal to scan networks without permission. So you can get in trouble. So don't scan networks without permission. But since I'm on my home network, so I give myself permission to scan the network, and I'll click on scan with the quick scan plus network. So now the scan has started, and now it may take some time. It may take 2 or 3 minutes for Nmap to scan everything. What this scan will do is, so it first has a SV flag. So SV flag, what the SV flag would do, it will scan for all the versions of the operating system or the software that is running on those devices. So as of now, we only know the IP address and the MAC address of the device. But after Nmap completes this scan, it will give us all the operating systems that are running on the devices and the version of the operating system running of them. Nmap uses a fuzzy logic to check it, so it may not be always correct, but it comes pretty close when you're scanning, and you can always, check and confirm. So as you can see, this bar is going up. So basically it means the scan is going on right now. So we'll just wait for the scan to complete. I'll fast forward the video or basically cut to the point when the scan is complete, and I'll let you know. Oh, I don't even need to cut to the point. We already have all the scan completed. So as you can see, a lot of output is given here, and we have, it took us 50 seconds to scan the whole network. So let's see. The first device that we already know, 192.168.0.1, it gives us a warning about it. But let me look at the scan report. Let's make it bigger so that you can see. I can't zoom in right now, but I hope you can see it's visible. So yeah, let's see. So it shows us for 192.168. Now we can see all the open ports on that device. Remember, we talked about ports before in the previous lecture. So ports are basically holes that allow different services to run on the same IP address. So we can see we have port 22 open. We have port 53, as discussed before. Port 53 was for SSH, then port 53 was for domain, and then we have port 80 and 443, as we discussed before, port 80 for HTTP and a 443 for HTTPS. Then we also have a port 9800 open for UPnP. So these are all the ports that are open on my Wi-Fi router, and Wi-Fi routers usually have multiple ports open to allow for all kinds of services. It also gives us that no exact OS matches were found. So basically it could not detect what operating system was running on it. So it gives us a fingerprint. Maybe sometimes you can make sense of it, but mostly you can't. But as you can see in the fingerprint, we see 64PC Linux GNU. So obviously the router is using some version of Linux. So now we know all the ports open on the Wi-Fi router and what kind of operating system it is using, what kind of brand it is. So now we have so much information of the device, and it's just not limited to the Wi-Fi router. Let's move on to the next step. So as you can see, service info also gives us that the operating system is using Linux. So as you can see, in the left tab of the host, you can also see a penguin icon appears. So basically it tells us that it's using Linux. Let's come to the next device. This is 192.168.122. As discussed before, so its MAC address is something that is unknown to Nmap, but still we know the IP address, and we know that it has a 5060 port open on it, which is a filtered SIP IP. So it's something, a port that is used for SIP. That could be another service, and we can look into it. Let's move down. Then I also have another device that is 192.168.146, and we also have another port open on it, 5060. Now you can see this is a Xiaomi device. So the Xiaomi device has a port, the same port open on it. So now you know that the Xiaomi device has this port, and you can obviously look into exploits for this port. You can Google them. We'll move into more how to find exploits for a specific device. We will discuss that more into the course later. But as you can see, we have the open ports. Then we also have the scan for the next IP address, that is 175, and it's scanned and it says all the ports are closed, and it gives us the MAC address and it says Intel Corporate. So it's probably some device that is using an Intel Wi-Fi device or an Intel card or something along the lines of Intel Wi-Fi adapter. That is why the MAC address is shown here and it says Intel. After that, we can move down and we have the 180 device. So whatever this device is. So as you can see, the device type is a phone and it's running Google Android 5.x and the OS is Google Android. So as you can see, we have information about the Android device, and it says that all these ports are open on it, and you can see the device manufacturer, which is Wistron New Web. So it's probably the Wi-Fi card in the device. I for now specifically know what kind of device it is, but you may not know. So this may come in handy. So now we have all the information that did. So this is basically my TV. So my smart TV is running Android 5.x, and as you can see, it has all these ports open on it, and its Wi-Fi card is manufactured by Wistron New Web. After that, you can move down and you can see 192.168.0.188. That is another device, and it's by Amazon Technologies, and it's also using Google Android. So basically now this is an Amazon device that has the Amazon services open. As you can see, port 8009 gives us Amazon Whisper Play. So it could be another service that is used by Amazon, and it is open on port 8009. That is specifically used by Amazon. And as you can see, it's also an Android device. It's running the Linux kernel, and you can also check the Android version given here. And then there is another device which says all the host is up and all the ports are closed. So basically no information could be gathered about this device. So as you can see, under 50 seconds, we have all the information of the devices that are connected to the network. Now we can, perform reconnaissance and check what kind of operating system these devices are running on. For example, if you know that some of these, so let's assume that this one had so you had an information about an iPhone or an Android version. You can check if that device is using an older Android version, and you can exploit it, or maybe use the routers, other ports to exploit it. So basically, once you do recon, you get all the information of all the services running on the device, and you can perform so much more with that. We can find exploits, we can, social engineer, maybe talk an Android person into installing a malicious APK, or use the smart TV to, install some APKs into it, whatnot. The possibilities are endless, but this is where it starts. So that was all about scanning and reconnaissance. Remember, you can always copy the command from here and copy it straight into Nmap into the terminal and use that to scan. I'll be using Nmap in the terminal moving on in the course, but you can always use Zenmap to provide the same command here and press scan. So now I hope that you understood what network scanning meant, what can we do once we are inside a network, how to scan for services, and how we can, make use of that information. In the next section of the course, we'll be talking about how to exploit a device, how to gain access to it. So we'll be using basically a virtual machine. So I might be installing Windows on a virtual machine or something else, and then we will perform a network scan and find exploits for it and get inside it. So once we're inside the network, we'll hack into some device to gain access to it. So yeah, that was pretty much for it for this course. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you in the next part.